Duval County, you have yourself a really talented, dynamic duo in the backfield behind Trevor Lawerence with Travis Etienne and your rookie running back, Tank Bigsby. What kind of impact can he have in 2023? We're going to tell you next on the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson, always on the ones and twos. You can find and follow me on Twitter or X, as they call it now, at DP_NFL. I am the host of the Locked On Clemson podcast. And guys, thank y'all for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every single day, Monday through Friday, man. Appreciate y'all tapping in as always, being the family, but being the everydayers, man. Take pride in that, and we love it and appreciate all the support. But you know what it is. You know how it goes, guys. I can't talk football without my guy, Mr. LSU, Mr. Football himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on Twitter at The Talent Code. Keith, talk to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? This is Keith Sanchez, senior draft analyst with the Draft Network, man, and 2019 national champ with those LSU bingo, those LSU Joe Burrow Tigers, right, man? But look, man, you know why we're here, right? Myself, Damian Parsons, we are here to bring you that championship-level content surrounding the NFL Draft 24/7, 365. We keep this thing rolling. And like DP said, man, shout out to our everydayers, DP, man. I thought about it because you mentioned it at the top, right? And you said the Twitter, right? And I was X. So I do we have to change our emblems on the YouTube channel now? Like we get rid of the bird and we put the X signal up. I was wondering what we have to do, man.
Keith, that's a question for our graphics guy.
Look,
that's
man,
above our pay grade.
That's above our pay grade, man. But listen, man, we have a hell of a show coming up. We're going to have our impact player, right? We're talking about Tank Bigsby, man. There was some videos going viral about him and who we think he is as a player and what type of impact he could have for the Jacksonville Jaguars, because just 2 years previous that, right? They drafted Travis Etienne, another explosive playmaker out of University of Clemson, man. Then we're going to talk about some Emmanuel Forbes, right? We got to talk about those Commanders, and I'm pretty sure that name is going to change again. And then we're getting into Lukas Van Ness. So y'all Green Bay Packers fans, y'all drafted yet again another first-round defensive player. What is he going to do? How is he going to contribute to this team? So DP, let's kick this thing off with Tank Bigsby, man. Everybody wants to talk offense, right? You might have a little fantasy people in here, a little sports betting people in here, or just simply AFC South and Jaguar fans that are interested in what could be one of the most explosive backfields in all of the NFL. So let's talk about Tank Bigsby and who he is as a player and what you think his impact will be on this team.
I think his impact's going to be big on this offense. I remember being at the combine this past March and listening to all the different coaches and GMs. And, so a lot of them keep things close to the vest. They give you coach speak. Basically, they're lying. Right. They're not giving you any real information. But the one coach that it was a few coaches that did speak what they really believed, and one of them was Doug Peterson, and he talked about the running back situation. And if you go back to his championship team in Philly, he had a stable of running back. He didn't have just a solo bell cow type of backfield. He had multiple guys that could do multiple things that could hurt you in multiple ways. And he talked about that. And he said, no, I believe in having anywhere from 2 to 4 bodies in the running back room. And what did he do in the NFL draft? 3rd round, he drafted Tank Bigsby to add him to that running backfield, that backfield with Snoop Conner and Travis Etienne. I think the impact for Tank Bigsby, the potential impact for him on this offense is going to be big, because one of the other things that Doug Peterson talked about, Keith and guys, was he wanted to basically kind of free up Etienne a little more and use him. He talked about even in the special teams game, kick and punt return, getting that explosive playmaker in space. And anybody that has followed me long enough when it came down to Travis Etienne, I've never been a big fan of his running style between the tackles. I always felt like he was an outside to in runner, right? Zone scheme, perimeter runs. Well, you now have a back that can dominate between the tackles in Tank Bigsby, right? With the vision, the footwork, the power, all the different things that you need to run between the tackles. Tank Bigsby can bring that. Dare I say, Keith, I would not be surprised to see a Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram type of situation where they're on the field at the same time. And Travis Etienne, who's really like kind of flourished and made himself a much better pass catcher since his early years at Clemson, I could see him lined up in the slot and having Tank Bigsby in the if it's pistol or just regular under center. If they want to go to like 11 personnel look, you can put Travis Etienne in the slot, have Tank Bigsby flanking, Trevor Lawerence, or in shotgun. You can come out with 22 with them both of those boys, and do, split backs in the backfield and shotgun, and really get creative. Because at the end of the day, that's what you want to do is help continue to help Trevor Lawerence. I think the impact for Tank Bigsby on this offense, I think it can be big, man.
Yeah, so Jaguars fans, and I don't know how AFC South or AFC fans should feel about this, but they should be excited about this, man. Tank Bigsby, because sometimes we get through training camp and there's some players that emerge where it's like, okay, I didn't expect you to step into that situation, right? But watching Tank Bigsby and talking to my people down there in Jacksonville, and they're like, man, he's killing it. And that's one of those guys where you're like, I'm not surprised, right? Because he's one of those players, man, where the situation that they went to in the NFL is actually better than the situation it was in college, right? So I think that it's going to be much better. And you asked, okay, how is this going to work? Because they drafted Travis Etienne. I agree with you, right? You're talking about Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara. But the thing is this, that these guys, they're probably both 6-footish, right? Like right around 6 foot, 5'11" and 7/8, right? They're probably both 208 pounds, right? They both probably run similar 40 times, high 4.4, somewhere around there. But they're different in mentality, right? Like Tank Bigsby's name, it fits his running style, right? Like this is a guy that, like you say, is going to kill you in between the tackles. But what's so unique about him is that he has that explosive vertical speed, right? So if you take the same player and you say, you know what, this guy runs with toughness, this guy doesn't, then they make perfect complementary pieces for an explosive offense. And that's why I think this will be one of the more explosive backfields in all of the NFL, because it's not just thunder and lightning, where thunder can't really take it all away, right? Thunder can rip the big run off also. So he's just a different guy stylistically. And then you mentioned Snoop Conner, the guy that got it out of Ole Miss, two drafts ago, right? So I believe that this, I think Tank is going to take off, man. And like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if this allows Travis Etienne to carve a more niche, or I don't want to use the word finesse, right? Because when you talk about finesse with football players, they take it personal, or it could say it's soft. So not necessarily finesse, but it more affect the passing game and the edges of the offense and the defense that they're going against more, and allow Tank to dominate. And I think he's gonna put up numbers, because you think about this also, DP. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was gonna say, the thing about this wide receiver core, right? Like you got Calvin really tearing it up, so they're not going to see heavy boxes. There's going to be 7-man, 6 people in the box, and they're going to tear this up. So I think sky's the limit for Tank Bigsby as far as being an impact player for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I can definitely see it.
Crazy enough, you basically took the point I was going to bring up. It's just the fact that with these receivers and the tight ends, Evan Ingram being explosive, they got another athletic guy in the draft in Brenton Strange, right? It's going to be hard to load the box on either one of these running backs, especially when you got Trevor Lawerence sitting back there, a guy that and Travis Etienne knows what that feels like to have Trevor Lawerence as quarterback. Tank Bigsby has not had a quarterback probably since high school, like not a real quarterback that can take pressure off him, push the safeties back, stuff like that. Auburn did have some athletic playmakers at receiver. They just didn't have a passing attack. So now he walks into an offense. When he steps on the field, he steps on the field with Trevor Lawerence at quarterback, under center, and defenses first are going to key in on Trevor Lawerence.
Yeah, that changes things.
It changes the math all the way. And even I think it was yesterday. I think that it was you talk about some of the clips, and I think the clip that went viral. He rattled off a 70-yard run where nobody caught him, right? And he's like, "Listen, he's big. He's got a nice frame. He's strong. He runs hard as a tank, as somebody with the name Tank should. But he does have the juice to hurt you in terms of the explosive runs. I'm excited to see this situation, Keith, because I think they both can keep each other healthy in terms of snap share and stuff like that too. But man, I think Tank is going to really, like you said, I think he's going to blow up in this offense. And it's the first time him having a quarterback. I'm excited to see this.
Breaking news. Tank Bigsby has a quarterback that he can actually mesh with, an offense that'll be competent for him and that he can actually benefit. So expect bigger numbers from Tank Bigsby in the NFL than what he even had in college. And I'm stamping that, I'm booking that. I think that will happen. But DP, let's keep this trend going, man. We got to go to the DMV area, right? We got to talk about those Washington Commanders, man. Their first round pick, they went with the playmaker, the lockdown corner, the guy that gets his hands on the football, broke the NCAA record. And Emmanuel Forbes, right? What is he going to do for the Washington Commanders? How is he going to perform? What is his expectation? So let's go ahead and put the spotlight. Spotlight is on Emmanuel Forbes. So coming up next, we're having that conversation about what is he going to do? How is he going to affect the NFC East, right? Is he going to be one of those guys that picks off Dak Prescott? We'll see, right? So coming up next, let's get into this Emmanuel Forbes conversation for the Washington Commanders.
Dog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy football and the best place for best ball. Guys, family, August is here, and you know what that means. It's the official start of fantasy football drafting month. You want to make money? Let us help you. Get championship ready for your home league by trying out Best Ball Mania on Underdog Fantasy. All you'd have to do is one live snake draft. No waivers, no trades. Underdog sets your best lineup every week. If you're like me, if you're like DP, you want to set it and forget it. And Best Ball on Underdog Fantasy will help you do that. Try out their Best Ball Mania tournament. It's the biggest fantasy football contest of all time. It's back and bigger than ever with $15 million of total prizes up for grabs with an absurd $3 million going to the winner. Last year, the winner drafted their team in July. So why are you still waiting here? Huh? Tell me that. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store and sign up with the promo code Locked On to get your first deposit doubled to up to $100. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code Locked On. Emmanuel Forbes, you are under the spotlight, brother. And the spotlight's big in DC, right? That's a big market, Keith. You know what I mean? So the spotlight over there is kind of bright, and I'm excited for when this pick was made. And you know, Emmanuel Forbes is one of my guys, one of Dame's dudes in the 2023 NFL draft. And you talk about the ball skills, the coverage ability. He plays with a level of toughness and swag that you need to flourish at the position. I think the main thing for me, Keith, when I look at the spotlight with him, is you're probably CB1 now, right? I think they have I forget the other corner's name. He's a tall guy. They drafted
Kendall Fuller. They drafted Benjamin St. Juice.
Benjamin St. Juice, that's right. That's his name.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm about to call him Stanley Baptiste. I don't know where that came from, but Benjamin St. Juice. They have him. They have Fuller. I think Emmanuel Forbes he was drafted to be CB1, truthfully, right? But I think the big thing for him, and I've seen this in some of the one-on-ones clips that's been circulating on Twitter, on social media, is that while he's in phase and he's covering well, so these big NFL receivers are being physical with him, and he did weigh in at 166, 167, whatever at the combine. So it's like, is that a situation where he's going to be pushed and shoved and knocked around at the catch point, right? Late in the rep, down the field, even though he's hip to hip. When you see guys kind of pushing off the curls and comeback routes and be able to create that separation. Now, at the same time, you know, in camp, they let that stuff slide. In game, you know, some refs are gonna be like, "Hey, bro, that's a flag. You know, here's that OPI for you. Let's go back 15 yards. You know what I mean? Let's get reset. You know, but some refs might let it slide. We've seen that, right? I mean, it's just a little chicken wing. You know, that was a full-fledged arm, man. That was the whole arm of the chicken. You know, and in that type of situation. So I think that's going to be the big thing for me is watching his physical development. If he adds any more weight, right, to kind of help complement his actual coverage ability, because he can cover with some of the best guys, you know, in terms of this draft class. Athletic, you know, good arm length. You know, he looks like the Sauce Gardner type, you know, corners, but he's more man to man rather than playing pure zone.
Yeah, so you know, people like, okay, why was Emmanuel Forbes? Because this is my thought process, right? Like, why was Emmanuel Forbes chosen for the spotlight, right? But then when you look at this roster, specifically on the defensive side of the football, right? And I go down the front, right? We talking Chase Young, Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, Montez Sweat, John Ridgeway, Fadarian Mathis, KJ Henry, who they just drafted, right? The front of this defense is loaded. Like it is
Mhm.
completely loaded. One of the most talented and best fronts, right? So now you're talking about the back end of the defense. And I think if the Washington Commanders are going to have a chance, it's because they're going to have to make plays on the back end of the defense, right? Like you have that front, and they always talk about what the front has to working with the back end, right? And now that you know that you have that pass rush, I believe that Emmanuel Forbes is the right type of guy for this situation because you need that guy that's going to be able to take chances, right? That's going to jump some routes. And if the pass rush can get there, the quarterback can feel the pressure. You need somebody with ball skills, with natural instincts. And that's what Emmanuel Forbes has as a football player. So when I watch him, I do agree, DP, that, hey, the spotlight is on him. And the size situation, he's going to have to get that rectified, right? Because playing in the NFC East, you're going to get A.J. Brown, you're going to get Ceedee Lamb, two bigger wide receivers, right? So you're going to have to get that part fixed in order to be able to thrive because you're going to be on a lot of teams' number one wide receiver. Because if you look at this Washington Commanders depth chart, right? Like cornerback is by far their weakest position, you know, in just the secondary overall, but cornerback by far the weakest position. So I agree with you, DP, that I think that he's going to have to show up that weight situation. Now, my expectations for him is that I think he'll do it, right? But when you talk about you, because you mentioned one name, you mentioned Sauce Gardner, right? And you know, our feelings, right, about who Sauce Gardner is as a player, they're well documented all over this podcast, right? But I will say this: the impact and the swagger that he had to bring to New York, right, in the Jets, Emmanuel Forbes has to kind of mimic that, right? He has to bring that swagger on the back end to kind of be like, okay, hey, we turning this thing around. This is like we're not, just going to be a defense that shows up. We're going to be a defense that balls out, right? We're not a secondary that's just going to be on the field. We're going to be a secondary that's going to contribute to making high level plays, and we're going to be the guys that make that are going to be deemed the playmakers.
No, 100%. I think you when you mentioned the AJ Brown kid, I ain't gonna lie, my heart kind of dropped for him because I was like, oh man, they call Swole Batman for a reason. So you think about those physical matchups, man, and not even just, granted, New York has more smaller receivers, right? But you think about playing outside, they're gonna throw Darren Waller out there, like, you know what I mean? So it's like, if you're in zone and stuff like that, and he's running a 9 route and you're in cover 3, that's your responsibility. Can you fight through the bigger frame receivers to be able to make up create those pass breakups and things? So it's going to be interesting, man. Just with him, but I think the coverage skills, the ball skills. I think he's a former wide receiver, so you see that, right? They always say the DBs are playing DB because they can't catch. That's not the case for Emmanuel Forbes. He can actually catch the football, and then he can return it to the house and make you pay for it. And that's where he, has been one of the best we've seen in college football history, really being able to turn interceptions into touchdowns. So
The
I think, like
touchdowns.
you said, that pass rush is legit. If everybody stays healthy, you have a lot of bodies that you can move around, mix and match, get creative for your pressure packages. Now you just need the back end, your secondary, to make the plays necessary to when those quarterbacks are sped up, go make the play. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Stay in phase, intercept the ball.
and for the Commanders, and I hope that I'm not skipping any big time names, right? But it's been a minute, right? It's been since Champ Bailey and D'Angelo Hall that they've had a real
Yeah,
playmaker. Like I'm trying to think in the past 5 years, but I don't think there's been, a corner, out there in the
not that I can
past
think of.
5-ish to 10 years that's really been on the outside on the boundary that kind of, jumps off the screen to you. So yeah, definitely spotlight is on Emmanuel Forbes as a young guy, and it's just because it's what he represents, right? And it's the biggest need, and just how we're kind of leaning on Sam Howell to pull his offense together. He's going to have some responsibility to kind of start turning his secondary around. First round pick, hey, you got to make some plays, right? That's why you were drafted. But DP, let's keep this thing going, man, because we have a coach him up segment. And I'm gonna be honest, when you brought this name up, I was rather surprised that he fell into this slot. So we have to get into this, man. Coach him up segment, man. DP, he selected Lukas Van Ness, the Green Bay Packers, man. So we're gonna have this conversation about Lukas Van Ness coming up next.
It's time to coach him up, Keith, and Coach K, as a lot of people know you as. We got to coach up Lukas Van Ness, and man, I've watched clips of him, during practice with the Green Bay Packers, and because you know how we felt about him pre draft, it was more, maybe he's more of a defensive lineman, right? Kind of 5 tech, edge rusher, 5 tech defensive end, probably 3 tech in terms of rushing the passer, because that's kind of the role he played prior to 2022 for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Well, seeing him at camp and seeing these videos, he's playing stand-up edge rusher, right? And Rashawn Gary just came back off, I think, the PUP list and everything. And you see what made everybody excited about Lukas Van Ness, right? It's that one rep against Paris Johnson, where he nearly literally throws him out the club, just bull rush, power, all of that, right? And you see the same thing. And I think for me is the way that they are using him, I feel like his stock is gonna be up. And I'm gonna tell you, for me at least,
I'm surprised. If you're gonna have I'm surprised. This is breaking news.
I was surprised myself.
This is breaking news. So let's have this conversation, because you've seen something that I haven't seen. Like you said, right? Like, you get more information, you able to make better decisions, right? So I'm love to hear your perspective on him as an edge rusher.
So what I've seen is they have them kind of like strong side on the side of the tight ends and everything, right? Those are matchups I think that he's going to be favored in 9 times out of 10. You know what I mean? Like, in terms of especially the run game, pass blocking situations, if you want to isolate him, having him out there and you got a tight end out there, right? Travis Kelce is one of the greatest, if not the greatest tight end of all time. I don't want Travis Kelce blocking Lukas Van Ness. I'm just going to be completely honest about that. That is not a situation that I am going to feel good about. But just watching him against tight ends and that power, it's not just it's not collegiate power, right? Like, that's NFL power. You see him drive blockers back, things of that nature. So when I say coach him up, we got to coach him up for those hand techniques, those counters, the double hand swipe, you know what I mean? The club, the counter club, different things like that, to be able to sell outside and still work back inside. Because if he can do that with his ability to convert speed to power, similar to an Aiden Hutchinson, right? Where it's like, all right, you give him that runway off the ball, and he can legitimately run through tackles. Now, in the NFL, especially in the NFC, in the NFC, you're gonna see Lane Johnsons and Christian Darrisaw's twice a season. Yeah, those aren't the type of guys, not Lane Johnson twice a season, because that's not in their division. But Christian Darrisaw for the Minnesota Vikings is an elite tackle in the game right now, young guy. And you're not running through him. So you got to develop those counters to where they know, yeah, he's got power, but he's got the counters and everything to go with it. I think his stock could be up if they continue to put him on the strong side, right? Get him messed up on those tight ends, where even if the tight end releases out in the route, right? Like, if he's outside shade of that tight end and that tight end releases, he's already got enough space of a gap between him and the tackle as the tackle's trying to get out of the gate. And that's where those counters come in, because if that tackle, quick sets or oversets to get vertical, then you work back inside, right? You if he wants to, just get too far into his kick slide, then cool, that's fine. I'm gonna work back across your face, and I'm gonna have a clear shot at your quarterback. So it just depends on how they continue to use him. But seeing him at edge, I kind of feel better about him in the way that I've seen him just off of the clips from Green Bay Packers practices.
Yeah, so I watched those clips, and this is kind of, I think that, because there was a quote, right? And I think LaFleur, Coach LaFleur, he said something that it takes guys a minute to figure it out, at the linebacker position, especially that edge hybrid, kind of stand-up edge rusher, because they have so many different responsibilities, run responsibilities, but then also pass rush responsibilities, being able to key and everything else, right? But I look at it and I think that the functional athleticism is there, right? Now is he going to be able to put everything, like you said, like executing quickly? Because what they said, the average quarterback gets the ball out in under 3 seconds, right? Maybe 2.5. Some of them like to get it out less than that. So everything has to fire for him, right? Within 2 seconds, right? He has to get off the ball, understand his pass, like go to his pass rush move, and then get to the quarterback in under 2.5 seconds. I don't know if the production will be there this year, right? I truly stand by this also, that I want to see them kick them inside more. Like, and if you're Green Bay, I don't understand what the issue is, right? Like, historically, Green Bay has always ran multiple fronts, right? Like, done some crazy things, like even back to the days of BJ Raji and Clay Matthews, with those, and then you had A.J. Hawk, right? Like, those defenses back from like that 2010 to 2015 era. So I think if they move him around, I actually like, similar to what he did at Iowa, I think it will be beneficial for him. He will be able to catch some offensive tackles off guard, but then use his athleticism to catch some interior offensive line, because this is a big guy. And I was just listening to and I by no means want to compare him to this player, but I was just listening to, I think it was a JJ Watt. It was a podcast or a quote. I can't remember if it was an interview, right? And he was talking about how, I think the year that he went with Arizona, he seriously considered going back home, right? Because he's from Wisconsin, and playing for Green Bay. And that's what I just thought about with Lukas Van Ness, right? Like get that hybrid type of guy. And I'm by no means calling Lukas Van Ness JJ Watt, but when you talk about stature, right? Because I think Lukas Van Ness can naturally put on another 20 to 30 pounds easy, right? And if you have this athletic, mobile interior defensive lineman, that on some reps you can kick him outside. I think that is a very that is a high asset, right? Like, it's a highly valued asset as far as a defensive lineman in the NFL. So if it doesn't work out, right, as him being this pass rusher, because we're talking about a first round pick, right? When your first round picks as a pass rusher, you want 8 to 12 sacks, right? Like that's what I drafted you for, to get after the quarterback. And if he doesn't necessarily get that, let's try to slide him down and see. But either way, DP, I agree with you. Coach him up segment from this perspective. The athleticism, we've seen enough. It's there. It translates, right? Like, we've seen it on the field. The Green Bay Packers had their with their fan night, right, where they had their kind of open scrimmage so everybody can come. You've seen the athleticism. The size is real. The mobility is real. So either way, coach him up. Figure it out, because this should be a guy that you put the investment into and get something out from, some sort of Pro Bowl-esque type level, because everything else is there.
No, 100%. Like I said, if he could just hone in on the technical aspect of the game, right? To play on the edge and become a. And I've seen, a lot of clips of him working with the coaches and stuff. Like, he's putting in the work. If he can develop the hand combat skills to quickly clear the hands and clear the shoulder to his path, clear those offensive tackles, those blockers on the edge, and clear his path to the quarterback. And like you said, and do it quickly and efficiently. Like, he can live on the edge, but at the same time, like you said, just understand what you have with him. Hey, if you need to kick him inside some games where if he is going against Christian Darrisaw and you see that this is not working, cool. Right. You know what I mean? You still got, I think Preston Smith is still on the team. Like, you still you know what you have. You still got Rashawn Garrett. Kick him inside. Get him up against some of these guards. Get him up against Christian. Or Bradbury, I think the center.
You mentioned Aiden Hutchinson, right? A lot of Aiden Hutchinson's sack production last year came via twists and stunts, right? Like these free releases. So do some different things. That's why I say, like, Green Bay, don't try to like do what you've been doing, right? Because you drafted this guy to fit in the system. Like, let him go ahead and do some different things as a player, because we know that, like, his athleticism and size is what got him drafted that high. So use it. 100%. That's pretty much what I'm trying to say. But DP, man, coach him up, right? Coach him up with Lukas Van Ness. I was not expecting you to take that curveball, but it's cool because you kind of dive into your bag a little bit. You think about it, and you're like, okay, from what perspective, man? But I think that was another good show, DP. We talked about Tank Bigsby, right? Like we said, fantasy, sports betting, whatever you. I'm just buying in on it, right? I gotta get my account set up. I'm buying in on the DP with Tank Bigsby, Emmanuel Forbes. Yes, just had new ownership with the Washington Commanders. Magic Irvin Johnson is there now, right? You got to ball out for Magic, man, and then you got to turn the secondary around, and Lukas Van Ness with the coach him up. But, man, that wraps up today's show. Like we said, man, shout out to our everydays. Thank y'all for tapping in. Like we said, man, comment, like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, man. Talk to us because we talk back. We love talking these rookies. We love talking the NFL draft 24/7, 365. We are your guys.
100%. Like he said, go subscribe, follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to get the latest episode as soon as it is available, guys. Hit that bell notification on YouTube so you're notified anytime we drop content. On tomorrow's show, Keith, it's Thursday night football. We have 2 preseason games for week 1, brother. We got 2 of them. We're going to talk about them. We're going to talk about the prospects we need to watch in those games, and we're going to finish it out with some pick 'em. We're going to pick those games and kind of get into our flow for the season. Now that football is here, guys. But in terms of Twitter, you can find and follow Keith Sanchez at DTalentCode. Me, DP_NFL. Come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.